distribution in Gluckstadt. You've got the list there. I mean, there were a lot of projects identified that had a very positive impact on traffic circulation for the county. So what we're here today to do is to talk about updating that transportation plan, to identify the areas that you're concerned about, that your constituents are complaining about, where you have congestion that needs some relief, where we can evaluate and quantify, is there a traffic problem, what can we do to solve it, and how much will it cost? So.
Jonathan, Mr. President, I have a couple of questions, please.
Go ahead.
Jonathan, looking at the list that you handed out, you have improvements here and implementing moving forward. Is that the list that we have finished some of those projects, or are we still working on them?
It's a combination of both. Like okay. Bozeman Road widening is in the right-of-way acquisition stage. You know, there are several that have been implemented, and then there are some that are still in the planning and design process.
Okay, but we are moving forward with that list then.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and refresh my memory. I know the study went from 463 north. How far north did it go as far as the study?
This map shows it went to Highway 22.
Y'all did go to Highway 22 then?
Yes, sir. And then we also looked at Nissan Parkway and Highway 22 also. That as we got into the scope of that project, that was an intersection that was added after we had initially scoped out the project. So obviously there's a lot more growth going on in that area with right. Amazon and other developments in that area with the mega site. So that area would certainly be of interest to do some planning for it, to make sure that as you're attracting all of this industry to that area, that the infrastructure can support it. And
I think this traffic study was done in 2016?
Yes, sir. Yeah. May of 2016 is when it was submitted. So, you know, we started a few months before that.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I have a question too.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, on of course I have the Weisenberger Road and Yandell Road, and both of those are overcrowded. But is there any way, especially on Weisenberger, it's so crooked? Is there any way to shoot a straight road through there somehow so that we don't have all that zig and zag?
That was one of the things that we did look at, was the effects of basically connecting Gluckstadt Road into Yandell. And part of the reason that it makes that jog that it makes is because of the drainage way that runs through there and the railroad track. That area, if Gluckstadt were to directly extend to Highway 51, that's where that creek crosses Highway 51. So you wind up with a lot of flood zone and floodway impacts, and that's most likely why it does what it does and didn't just go directly across, that they found a easier crossing of that creek. So it can be done, but you would wind up with a bridge over the railroad, which and the creek, and railroad bridge going over the railroad, you have to have 21.5 feet of vertical clearance from the top of the rail to the bottom of the structure when you're going over the railroad. And I don't know that they would allow another at-grade crossing through there.
Oh. And then Weisenberger, well, no, back to Yandell. Yandell down there on the Deerfield side, it's so wet down there. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. I don't know why, but I know it's too wet, and surely you guys can figure out what to do about that.
Yes, I mean, Yandell has some areas, particularly around the school, and that was one of the recommendations in the prior report, was to widen that section of Yandell Road at the fire station and going just east of Highway 51, and then also to provide left turn lanes at the school, so that you know, the traffic has significantly increased. You've got lots of residential development out there, and more coming. You know, I mean, there's such a high demand for housing right now. Everybody is buying houses and building houses, and the infrastructure is going to have more and more stress on it. But we would welcome your input. I mean, we want your input. We want to scope this thing out, and we'll meet individually or with 2 or 3, however you want to do it, so that we understand what your priorities are and that we're evaluating that, and so that you're getting what you want out of this study, that we can identify what improvements are needed and what they're going to cost, how it would affect your budget.
Okay, thank you.
Did y'all,
What I got to add is, it's still on Yandale Road. And I guess what I would need to know, do we need to consider widening Yandale Road or finding another route out? This is Yandale Road east of North Old Canton, up there about
Yes, sir.
Bang Bridge and
Gunter Road out there, off of Yandale, east of 43.
Yes. All those houses are being built up here. When it strike them that when they trying to get to that school to drop the children off or make it to work, they gonna wish they had built in Camden, cause the drive and the time gonna take them just that long to get there. But is there another way out? No, Cotton Blossom, there's another little road that runs through there, that runs to North Old Canton, between
Sowell? Is that what-
Sowell Road, I think it is. Is that something we need to be looking at to help get that traffic out of there when by the time all those subdivisions come online?
That is a great point, and one of the things that I had spoken with Mr. Bryan about was that we also want to update the functional classification system for the county, and it's the map of your federal aid routes that are functionally classified as arterials, collectors, major and minor collectors, major and minor arterials, and that makes you eligible for federal funding, particularly like that. And you've got a lot of county roads that, like Gus Green Road, Cedar Hill Road, that function that way. They function as collector and arterial routes, but they're not on your functionally classified map just because it's an old map and it's a rural area. So we want to work with CMPDD to get these routes added to your functionally classified system, and doing exactly what you're saying is planning for how are people going to move through the county. And there's a lot of new development, a lot of dense development going into what was previously, rural, undeveloped areas, and so they didn't need to have these routes classified or worried about how these people were going to get to an employment center. And so now the density is much higher, the pressure on development is much higher, the congestion is much higher in lots of areas, not just Yandale. I mean, you look at what Gluckstadt added, restriped it just to get 2 eastbound lanes from Bozeman to I-55, and that's had a huge impact on moving traffic in that area. It's really provided a lot of relief. But yes, sir, there's things like that, and that's exactly what I want to meet with each of you about and get clear of what your focus areas are. But I think there's a I'm trying to think back. I've done multiple counts on Catlett Road north of Gluckstadt Road.